Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Episode 3. It's called Jinaal. So spoilers for the episode. And I'm sorry to say that this episode is exactly what I was fearing when they introduced the whole, like, Easter egg hunt from last episode, or this game of scavenger hunt. That's the phrase I'm looking for. It's a scavenger hunt, and this had about the amount of depth that I expected from that such plot. And then there's subplots that I'll get into as well, with a bunch of character drama that did not fill me with that much, other than just resentment. I guess is the best word. Yeah, I thought this was a very tedious episode to get through. It was kind of the worst of everything I don't like about this show, kind of wrapped up into a ball. With the possible exception, maybe, of there's not too many big, spectacular action moments that it feels like it's trying really hard necessarily. That's maybe the one thing that's missing here. But the main plot of this is that it's Michael, Book, Culber, and Adira go to Trill. And one of the things, of course, that they've been setting up last episode was that Adira and Gray were probably going to break up. So we get several moments of them being awkward, looking at each other, and then eventually they have time to have the conversation. But we get a scene where, like, hey, we have to talk to each other later. Okay, hey, you said there's something you wanted to talk to me about, and then we have the conversation. There's a lot of build up to get into this conversation, and I've never been particularly invested in their relationship. I've never really thought they had much chemistry. It's something that I've said before in past seasons. And while it's maybe a good thing that they're, separating here so we can just officially be done with having to even do anything with it, that's probably a good thing overall. But goddamn, I would have liked a quick a quick Skype call where they break up, or hell, just have Adira say that they broke up off camera. That would be perfect. That would be the perfect amount, because instead we have to sit through a very poorly written scene where they just kind of say all the very obvious things. Oh, we've been apart for so long. You're following your path, and I'm following my path. What can we do? Things feel weird. Oh, maybe we could try and see each other more. Oh, I don't think that would work. I shouldn't give up what I have to be with you, and you shouldn't give up what you have to be with me. It's so tedious a scene. Like, they're just painfully going through every obvious point until they get to the inevitable conclusion that obviously they're breaking up. I get what the writers thought this could be in their head. Like, I get the idea. Like, if you're really invested in two characters and you can tell from the start of the scene that it's doomed, but they're just not accepting it, that could be something. That could be compelling. That could be this tragic scene where you're kind of like dreading where they finally get to that realization. But I think one of the things that maybe it's missing is that one of the characters probably should need to have that realization. It kind of felt from last episode that Adira had already gotten to that point where they'd realized, oh, I feel like I'm happier being on my own. I'm better being single right now, or at least not with Gray. But they still kind of play this scene like Adira's not realized that yet, and it just kind of felt false. I think maybe that would be one thing that would improve it, is that one character is actually still in denial until the final moment. Whereas instead it kind of plays like this weird thing where Adira isn't in denial so much as that they're just saying what they think Gray will want to hear, and then Gray still has to dispel it like they would. So I don't know. The whole thing just felt very tedious to me. I hope this means there's no more relationship drama between them. I really do. Anyway, the main plot once they're on Trill is that they have to answer a riddle before they even are allowed to land on the planet. And then they put the Trill, or the host, or whoever it was that was alive 800 years ago, into Culber. So Culber's actually playing a different character for most of this episode, who's just delighted to be walking around again. That's fine, but this entire plot is just, hey, we have to go fetch a MacGuffin, and all it is a series of obstacles to create some action scenes to get that MacGuffin. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but this show has pulled it a lot, right? I mean, hell, last episode was mostly that, with the the laser beam things, the drones on the planet with the statues. Like that was basically the same thing. There's an item we need, and there's a trap. In this case, it's a couple of monsters that are cloaking that we get some scenes out of. But by and large, it's the same core idea. There's a thing we have to get. There's an obstacle in the way, and it just feels like busy work, I guess. Right? It's just everything about it feels so like just bare minimum in terms of like thinking out a story. Like it's probably the simplest thing you could do is we have to get a thing. There's something in front of the thing that stops us from getting it. Rinse and repeat. We have to do that multiple times. On the upside, the one good point I have to make is that there's only 2 or 3 pieces of this puzzle left, meaning that we can't have nothing but these episodes all season. We have to do something different, at least after a few of them. So the actual monster stuff is whatever. Like I didn't really feel that much from it. I think it's especially annoying that the end point from the Jinaal, who's the character that Culber actually is inhabited by, is that afterwards it turned out to be a test. It was like, oh, would you just try and kill these monsters, or would you try and understand this alien life form and show compassion in trying to get out of it a different way? And they did, right? Ultimately, they use books like animal whispering ability to kind of get out and show they're not a threat, yada yada. But it kind of felt like we focused so much on just the action of it rather than the emotional realization that there's another way out of it. I don't know, it felt a little bit hollow. And this is a complaint I come back to a lot in Discovery, and it's something that really, again, just reared its ugly head at the end of this episode. The final few minutes of this episode is Gray making a speech on Trill about life and human connections and what we're all searching for. And it's this big grand speech. It's meant to sound meaningful. It's meant to sound insightful as we cut around all the different characters and what they're up to, as if this speech applies to every character on the show. And it's got this little air of pretension about it where it seems to think that this episode was about 10 times deeper than it actually was. Because what it actually was very, very, very simplistic. And there's nothing wrong with being simple as long as you just treat it like it was simple. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but there's nothing wrong with a simple action story where you have to get from point A to point B and there's obstacles in between. And then you make it be about kind of the growing along the way, and you make it be about how fun the action is. But I wouldn't say the action in this is particularly fun. I wouldn't say Michael and Book really have any character advancement or grow going through this little journey together. If anything, all they really do is rehash a joke from Lethal Weapon 2, where they're like, do we go on 3 or do we go after 3? That movie's as old as I am. I feel like I've heard that same joke repeated in a lot of movies and TV shows at this point. They do pay it off a little bit by have it coming back round later on in the episode, but it's like that's it. That's all I remember from all this, really. Again, it's this thing where the core concepts of what they're doing aren't inherently bad. It's just how they handle them. Over and over again, this show just whiffs on the fundamentals, and it wants the prestige of saying, oh, we are a Star Trek show and we're tackling stories about compassion. Hell, the very first Next Generation episode, Encounter at Farpoint, is about finding out that what's actually going on is just these 2 life forms that are falling in love, right? And it's kind of sweet at the end. It's not the greatest episode in the world, but the ending of Encounter at Farpoint, I think, plays way better than anything that happens in this episode, and certainly most of Discovery episodes where they try and have like a Star Trek-y type ending or moment to what's going on. And I think part of it is just the writing. I think it just comes down to not understanding the material or how to actually get these sentiments across. Instead, the music ramps up and someone makes a speech and does sort of like almost like a stolen valor thing. It's almost like it's stealing the idea that it said something profound, but I don't know, it didn't earn it. And that's just something I feel a lot on this show. What else have we got in this episode? We got Saru's love life. Again, I found this plot extremely annoying because it was the most simplistic subplot TV writing ever, where it introduces in one scene the conflict, right? Or sets up the characters and then introduces the conflict. Next scene, one character enacts said conflict. Final scene, character understands why they screwed up and apologizes, and we're back to square one. We're back to just having solved the conflict and nothing of consequence has happened. In this particular case, it's about Saru and the Vulcan president announcing their engagement, which they're kind of excited to do, right? It's a bit awkward, everything, but this has been kind of their whole relationship, is that it's kind of awkward because she's Vulcan and he's not. But then her political advisor takes Saru aside and says, hey, maybe announcing your engagement's not such a great idea. The Vulcan purists are going to, like, throw a bit of a tiff because they're not really in love with the fact that their representative in the Federation is with a non-Vulcan. And this really, Saru gets thinking about it and he's really questioning it. So next time we come back, he's having tea with his Vulcan, and he says, hey, maybe we should postpone the engagement announcement. And she gets upset, well, as much as a Vulcan can, at least, and says, yeah, I know my advisor's probably spoken to you then, and I like his advice, but I'm not always going to follow it, and you should trust me to make the right decisions, blah, 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 blah. We cut away. We come back. The final scene is Saru coming up and apologizing, and that she should be listening to her. She makes it clear that the announcement, it would be much worse if they got engaged and they didn't announce it, because then it'd be like she was hiding something. At least this way she can be honest and she can control whatever comes. And Saru apologizes and says, okay, whatever happens as a result of our announcement, I'll be there to face it with you. And they're happy. End of subplot. This is, it feels like sometimes you can just see the strings. You can just see the structure of the plot, and all they've done is plug in what the actual dispute is and what the dialogue is, but there's nothing to it. There's no sense of discovery where you get to realize how Saru's screwed up, or what like, hell, even this idea of the Vulcan purists that are going to be upset about this marriage, I think that's new. Maybe it came up last season. Maybe the idea of the Vulcan purists was mentioned in season 4. I do not remember. But it feels like a new concept that they've introduced here this way. So even when the Vulcan advisor comes in and says, hey, I'm concerned about this, and he introduces this whole new concept, okay, that's an interesting concept. The idea that there's some Vulcans who are against being a part of the Federation, or certainly being against the representation, having an interspecies marriage. Like, there's things you could do with that. There's things you could play with there. But it's really just used to set up this conflict to suggest that, hey, maybe something, the marriage might not go through. Maybe there's going to be second thoughts, and it's not all going to be in the honeymoon phase kind of thing. And it's just a simple 1, 2, 3. Introduce the source of conflict. Saru makes his suggestion. The conflict happens. Saru apologizes. The conflict's over. And it really feels that simple. It feels like that's all it was. And it was not engaging. It feels like you're just going through a checklist of the plot beats, and you get to the end and you feel nothing. Well, I felt nothing. I certainly felt nothing. Oh God, I hated this episode. I really did. What's the other subplot? We got our new first officer. What's his name? Raynor. He's a new character. Not that I remember all the old characters' names either, but he's the focus of the subplot, so I'll check out his name. Yeah, basically Michael tells him he has to try and get to know the crew, go around and do one-on-one meet and greets kind of thing to sort of earn their trust and whatnot. And he doesn't want to do that. Tilly's left to chaperone him, and I guess Tilly's just back on the ship for the foreseeable future. It feels like they just, like, if you wanted her to be around, why not just wait until the end of this season to send her off to be a teacher? It just feels really forced here that they've just made up they've just hand-waved the fact that she's back on the ship, but it's not permanent. She'll be a teacher again, but just for the sake of this mission, I guess she's back on the ship. I don't know, it just feels like a hand wave of a thing, because they just want her to be around, and that's it. But anyway, she's chaperoning Raynor, and Raynor basically just tells her to get everyone to come and see him. He only gives them 30 seconds. He gives them exactly 20 words to try and tell them something about themselves that isn't in their file. And it feels very cold. It feels like he's not really getting to know anyone. We see a few examples of it until eventually Stamets comes in and he's all excited about some discoveries he's making about this technology that they're looking for. He's a bit more interested in that because it's relevant to the mission, but as soon as it just becomes about Stamets being excited about it, he tells him to get lost. And then Tilly gives him 20 words that basically is telling him to go F himself. And the wrap up to this is they're in the bar area. I want to call it 10 forward. It's not called 10 forward, but that's what I want to call it. And he makes a point that he's taken in every single thing he heard that day, and he's even analysed all the crew members and understands who they are to some extent. But Telly points out that, hey, analysing is not the same as getting to know them. It's not the same as earning their trust and earning their respect. He brings up respect, and she's like, hey, it goes two ways. You have to earn theirs as well. And that gives him a moment pause. And then we see him during the big speech montage just kind of like staring at everyone being happy in 10 forward and him feeling lonely. So his arc is probably going to be that he's going to get to bond with human beings, I guess. Meanwhile, I should probably mention as well, it feels like they're setting up something with Culber, where this experience of having this other person inside Culber seems to have been this like almost religious experience for him. I don't know if they're going to do something with that. Then maybe have him sort of look for a new path in life or something. Stamets seems like he's excited because this new discovery might be even bigger than the whole, spore drive, which he's very upset about that they're taking away and they're not going to develop anymore. Like, his scientific work means nothing, so now he's got a new white whale that he can chase after and possibly make a name for himself on. So his arc's clearly going to come from that stuff, I think. Reno was back. She talked to Adira for a bit and talked to Raynor. I don't really have anything to say about her scenes. She's an entertaining enough character, but I don't know. Like the inclusion here didn't really amount to much, and I think that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the episode. It felt like a side quest in a video game, or not even a side quest because it's the part of the main plot. But it felt like just a quest in a video game that's just designed to pad out the experience. Where, oh, we can do a whole level about getting this thing for the main plot, so it's going to be its own little thing. But it's, that's what it feels like. It feels like just this extra branch to the main plot just to make an episode out of it. Which, obviously, when you break any writing down to its fundamentals, at some stage on any story, some of the best stories ever told, when they were starting out in the writer's room, would have been phrased like that. It'd be like, hey, this will give us a chance to explore these things, and this, we can do this over here, and these will make up the core parts of the story. The problem is with Discovery is I never feel like it goes beyond that. I feel like I'm still just seeing the results on the screen are still just the basic fundamentals of what it's doing, is that they have this side plot to go do, which can turn into a whole episode, and it's just busy work until we get to MacGuffin, and now we can move on to the next place. And that's the thing, they get the next piece of the puzzle, and it's got coordinates for the next place. I guess we're going there next episode. Yay. Can't wait. Like, I hate to be so negative. I really do. I don't want to be a dick. I really don't want to be a dick. But I don't even have someone to bounce off anymore. Okay? So I'm just miserable in watching Star Trek Discovery on my own, and I don't enjoy the show. I think most of the characters are bland and lacking character. The writing's paper thin. There's 7 left. That's my positive. There's only 7 left. It's going to feel like a long 7. After this one, it feels like a long stretch still to get to the ending. But I'm looking forward to getting to that ending. That's my thoughts on this week's Star Trek Discovery. I should probably mention the little tease at the end. The villain, Maul, I think it's her name, is in disguise in the Trill place and puts like a tracking bug or something onto Adira. It was like a little thing that is dissolved into the fabric, so we'll see more about what that is next time, presumably. It makes sense they're not just going to come in guns blazing, because what would it achieve if Discovery and Co have already got the clue and know where they're going? So they're more just chasing Discovery at this point to try and beat them to the final part, and they'll probably try and steal all the pieces they have from the ship at some point during the season. And there'll be a big thing with Michael, or sorry, not Michael, but Book, and like this character having like a face off where he gets emotional because of her past, connecting to his past, blah 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 blah. All right, that's my thoughts on Discovery. Let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch. You can support over in patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep the lights on. But that is me, so thank you very much for joining. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?